Welcome to the Johnson Beverages Incorporated case overview. If you would turn to your book, pages 57 through, there's several here, through 63 is the pages for this particular case. And let me briefly just give you an idea of what's going on here. So you've got a company that has several customers that they're doing business with. And one of their best customers has been approached by one of their competitors. They're trying to kind of steal their business away. And so they're talking about what can they do to keep this customer. And of course, it all involves price. So giving a more competitive price is what it's going to take. And they don't think that they can be any more competitive without losing money. And it's a large customer. So it would have a huge impact on their bottom line if they chose to do that, to lower their price. And so they have a meeting and they start digging into their numbers and looking at the way they're allocating their customer service costs for each of their customers. And it becomes apparent pretty quickly that the one customer they're concerned about losing is not only one of their biggest and most profitable customers, but also a customer that doesn't give them a lot of grief. So they really emphasize that in the case, that this is a customer that they really want to keep, and they understand why the competitors are going after them. And they say that some of their other customers are the ones that cause them all these problems, and they're, might be a smaller customer, and they're causing them a lot of problems. And so they incur costs like special orders that get placed that are rush orders, or maybe service calls that need to be made that causes the company to increase its cost. So they look carefully at how they're allocating those types of costs, and they're currently using a percentage of revenue. So if you're a bigger customer, you're going to absorb more of those costs, even if your company isn't really incurring them. So their system is somewhat flawed in that it's distorting the cost allocation in favor of size. So if you're bigger, you're going to get more of that assigned to you. A very common problem and very common way to allocate costs is by size, revenue. So you run into the same kind of situation when you have a company that has multiple divisions or multiple regions or multiple product lines, and you try to assess overhead costs to those various areas using size. It's just not going to give you very accurate answers. Okay. So then they start digging into the various costs, the customer service costs, and they break them into cost pools. So this should sound familiar. They break them into cost pools, and then they figure out what would be the best cost driver for each one of those pools. And then they collect the data in terms of actual occurrences for each customer within each of those cost drivers, so that they can then allocate on a percentage basis based on the actual activity that's going on for each customer, as opposed to just arbitrarily assigning it based on size. And the results they get when they do that are really interesting and very revealing. And so it helps them to make better decisions about what they really can do for their customers to maintain those that are their best customers. And that's kind of where you're going to go with this case. So it's not a super hard case, but it's a very important case, because this is often, again, all the examples that I give you in this class are very traditional problems that exist across organizations. So the three key things you'll be looking at is, again, looking again at what's the basic terminology for an activity-based costing system. So again, what are the things, what is a cost pool, what is our cost drivers, and how do you allocate out to these various customers in this case. And you'll be comparing that to a traditional, which is, as I stated, a revenue-based model, and doing kind of a compare-contrast. And then you're going to describe some of the strategic implications of that. So looking at this overview, this summary, I've already done that, but let's just go through this real quick. So again, the data was compiled by the accountant. Customer service costs were allocated as percentage of revenue. It suggests the profit margin on the customer is too low to withstand a price decrease. You're asked to design an activity-based costing system for allocating those costs and to use it to estimate customer profitability for several customers and then decide should they lower the price. So as I said, bigger customers are absorbing a larger portion of the overhead, but when you look carefully at those costs, they're actually being driven by factors other than size. So the new system is going to allow you to track those costs more carefully to the customers in which are customers that are incurring those costs. And the results, when you get done with that and you look at the big picture, you're going to see it's a completely different allocation than what you had before, and the information you glean from that is much different than what you had before. And so that higher quality data will help inform your strategy in how you deal with your customers, right? And maybe the discounts that you offer them. One of the ideas that had occurred to me was coming up with sort of a differentiated pricing model where there's a base price. Obviously, there's the cost of the products that are being sold, but then there's also the cost of these services. So perhaps the customers could actually pay for the services that they're consuming. So we might price it sort of like what you might find with an airline, where you pay a base amount for a certain type of ticket, and then depending on additional services that you may want to have, you can upscale or add to the price of your ticket, kind of customize it, even down to your luggage and how you want to move your belongings. So I was thinking maybe you could consider that as part of a strategy they might consider. All right, so this last one here, competitive pricing strategy for customers, and how would you start that and how would you set it up? Okay, so that's really all I had to say on this particular case. It's now a long video this time, and the case isn't overly complicated or terribly long, so you get a little breather on this. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out and let me know.